Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
President Obama cried today as he remembered the children killed in an elementary school shooting. Spelling out new plans to tighten gun controls, he said he'd been changed by the massacre of 20 children and 6 adults at the school in Connecticut. He says he wants to change a country where polls show most Americans support greater checks on people buying guns. But as our chief correspondent Alex Thompson now reports, getting that through Congress has proved impossible.
Fancy a 50 cal machine gun to take home? Yours perfectly legally in America, of course. Gun ownership here has doubled under Obama. And frustrated, today the president seized unusual powers to bypass Congress and force gun owners to undergo slightly more rigorous background checks before purchase. Flanked today by some victims of gun violence, it wasn't just presidential frustration, but grief.
Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad. And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day.
He didn't cry, I don't think, after San Bernardino. Did he cry? Did he cry after that?
No.
I don't think he cried. He didn't cry after Paris.
He can't pull that kind of passion for anything but this, and I feel bad about those kids in Connecticut, but it's only about this that he gets so upset about and never about terror.
Where was the wiping away of tears and the emotion after the Paris attacks?
I would check that podium for like a raw onion or some no more tears. I mean, it's not really believable.
So time to act, he said. An urgent Congress bypass operation.
Number one, anybody in the business of selling firearms must get a license and conduct background checks or be subject to criminal prosecutions.
And it all plays, of course, straight into the election campaign trail in the run-up to Iowa on February the 1st. Republicans acting like Obama's tearing up the Constitution, and their message, vote for me, I'll abolish the decree.
You don't stop bad guys by taking away our guns. You stop bad guys by using our guns.
This year, just 5 days in, 125 people have died in gun violence in the USA. 8 children were either killed outright or suffered gunshot injuries. 280 people were injured in 452 incidents. Obama's been trying since 2013 after the Sandy Hook, Connecticut massacre, where 20 children were gunned down the previous year. But since then, it's been massacre after massacre after massacre.
Fort Hood, Binghamton, Aurora, Oak Creek, Newtown, the Navy Yard, Santa Barbara, Charleston, San Bernardino. Too many.
Each year, around 50 people will die in the UK because of gun violence. Last year, the US figure was 13,338, including 330 mass shootings, that's involving more than 4 people, and 692 children under 11 were either killed or injured by gunfire. Add suicides, and more than 30,000 Americans die by the bullet every year. And yet, just last week, in a massive 2 fingers to Obama's White House, Texas voted to allow the folks to carry their firearms openly. Why just support the Second Amendment when you can wear it too? Obama then faces a legal and political dogfight on this most divisive of issues. The insight into America today, simply this: so very small a tinkering with gun culture creates so vast a debate.
Alex Thompson reporting. Well, joining us now from Washington is Neil McCabe. He works for Armed American Radio, a station which promotes gun ownership. He's a reporter and gun enthusiast. Neil McCabe, I can tell you're a patriot. Are you proud of a country that manages to see the deaths of 13,338 people from gunshot wounds from guns fired by civilians in your country in 1 year?
Well, I really don't know how to answer that. I mean, I'm a proud veteran of the war in Iraq, and I'm proud of this country in every way you can possibly imagine. But I don't know if I'm responsible for that statistic.
I didn't ask you if you were responsible. I asked if you were proud of it, of that statistic.
Am I
or are
proud
you
of
ashamed?
people being...
Are you ashamed? That would be the alternative.
I don't know if I'm ashamed or I don't know if I'm proud. It happens, and in a free country, these things happen. There's always going to be risks. There's always going to be situations. I do know that murders by guns have been falling for the last at least 6 years, and I do know that a lot of Americans, like myself, feel no obligation to be a victim, and if this is a massacre after massacre country, as your reporter described, I would prefer to be armed rather than disarmed.
Well, it actually, since Alex Thompson put that report together, in his report we counted 125 people having died this year. That's in 5 days. Actually, the figure's just gone up to 137. Are you proud of that figure?
I mean, I don't know. It's just part of life, I think. I mean, there are many people drowned.
No, it's part of death, Mr. McCabe. That's death. That's dead people.
John,
people who've died as a result of guns.
Well, listen, more people die by fists and kicks than by rifles. So, I mean, I don't know how you want to divide it. People die, people are murdered. It's human nature. But in those situations, there is no obligation to be a victim. I don't want to hide under a desk. I would rather have a gun to protect myself.
Is there a danger,
Sir?
do you think, perhaps, that some of the people who get hold of guns are what you and I might call nutters?
I don't know what that means.
Well, mad people.
I do know that there are
people
people
who are crazy. I think that would be the word in America.
I think that the statistics would tell you that 80 or 90% of the people who suffer from mental illness are not necessarily violent. If someone has been judged unable to function, or a judge has said that he's mentally ill, I guess there's a way to go through a legal process. But the idea that there's a list of Americans who are so dangerous to hold a gun is absurd. I mean, how do you come up with that list?
But I sense you might be sympathetic to Mr. Obama then, that you'd rather like to know if somebody has been declared by a judge to be mentally incapacitated and therefore perhaps not right to carry a gun. But I think you're against background checks, and those background checks would reveal such a thing.
Well, the background checks, there's two problems with background checks. One is that just as a function, as a process, right? The idea that you have to ask permission to exercise a constitutional right strikes people as absurd and really un-American. The second thing about background checks is that they're notoriously inaccurate. Of the 2 million purchases that have been blocked by background checks, something like 95% of them are false readings. So it's absolutely absurd system. It should be thrown out.
Well, Mr. McCabe,
I mean, really, think about it. Who are the gangbangers? Who are the gangbangers or terrorists who are going to fill out background check forms?
Mr. McCabe, just to conclude, the figure has just gone up to 141 people have died from gunshot wounds this year. Thank you very much for joining us.
I don't celebrate those numbers like you seem to.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe.